Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Is It a Real Classic, a podcast about movies and TV shows where a bunch of well-versed folks come together and answer that age-old movie debate about what makes a classic. I'm your host, Lit Nick, coming to you from the crucible of content, the lab itself. That's right, back for a double feature, which we're going to do immediately after this. And with me, as always, is Mr. John Wick Jarrett. Say hello, Mr. John Wick Jarrett.
Hello!
Cobra.
Do you like my radio voice? Hello!
This comedy bit is not working. Cobra Kai KP. Have a voice for silent movies. Cobra Kai KP.
Strike first, no mercy.
Hoo-wah.
Now on Netflix.
You know, that's a good... I'll plug that in the next episode.
Yes.
And we, of course, have Mr. Bad Times at the L, Justine.
Hola.
Nice.
Yes, and then, of course, we're still coming up with names. I'm personally a big fan of Ratatouille.
Ratatouille. Love it.
Okay, I came up with a better one.
Okay.
How about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
No.
Ratatouille!
Ratatouille.
All right. And today...
Just call me by my name.
I am. And also adding Ratatouille at
That's
the
a
end.
different movie.
Call me by your name.
Oh, yeah.
Not by my name. Well, I swear we've lost the plot already. Today we're going to be talking about Superman versus the Elite in honor of DC fandom, which is unfortunately a week past, but due to some current events, we had to push our pod a little farther back, but don't worry, we've come back with the good content. Now, for those of you who don't know, Superman vs. the Elite is an animated film that tells the story of Superman during a time of global unrest, when he's suddenly confronted by a popular group of anti-heroes named the Elite, whose ways of doling out justice specifically, involve killing and justice no matter the cost, which for him is a big no-no of Superman. So now the Man of Tomorrow must not only fight against the evils of the world, but also relevancy, as the Elite grow more popular and more deadly as a result. Da-da-da-da. Now, this comic is indeed based on...
Hilarity ensues.
Hilarity ensues, and well, a lot ensues. This fun fact, because DC's animated whole world, because this is a DC animated movie, they sometimes will base certain of their films on some of their famous comic books. And for this one, they specifically made a movie based on a single issue of a comic called What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which is a reference to the song What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding, which I feel like entirely encapsulates the ideals of the movie, ultimately what it's trying to say. Are we familiar with or the comic or the song?
Both.
Both. Ooh.
Both.
Were we a fan of the comic when we first read it back when it came out? Early 2000s, I want to say.
I wouldn't say that I remember it exactly, but yes. I used to like Superman comics. There was a time period. Well, I think we'll get there anyway, so I won't expound too much. But I'm a bigger fan of Elvis Costello.
Oh yeah. What about you, Justin?
Than actually Superman. So.
Oh.
I'm going to go with I was a bigger fan of Elvis Costello than Superman, but I read the comic book and did enjoy it. I thought it brought up some interesting questions. I wasn't,
We'll talk about those questions.
I'm a Marvel guy, not a DC guy by nature. So
we love both.
I do think that if you are a Marvel guy, like if you make that distinction, Superman is your lightning rod. And I think that flows into this conversation.
Yeah, because a lot of the big points that the whole comic was trying to go into, which is very evident in the movie, which is, once again, the relevancy of Superman. I have heard it ad nauseum about certain characters like Superman, about them saying he's a boring character, a one-note character, and should just be done away with. He was the first comic book character and has nothing interesting about him anymore. He's done. He's finito.
And a lot of his original tales, everything is black and white. Everything is good or bad, and we currently have decided that the whole world is gray and nobody can be pure and nobody can be... Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so there's where you get to the arguments I believe that you're talking about.
Yeah, you would have... are we all... I'm assuming Jared... I point to Jared and Mr. Ray over there. How familiar are we with Super... That sounds really dumb to say. How familiar are you with Superman?
Have you ever heard of the...
Is this a really rare
origin
character?
story of Superman?
The one from Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, 2013. That one?
I've seen, every movie Superman's been in except for, Justice League. Good and bad.
The Christopher Reeves ones?
The Christopher Reeve one.
Yeah, I saw the Christopher Reeves one. Yeah,
They're off the chain.
Except
for the Richard Pryor one.
Hey.
I
There's a
agree
quest
with-
for peace.
I do
Yes.
tend to agree with a lot of people saying he's boring, but that's only certain stories. I don't really think that every single story that has involved Superman is boring in one note.
Yeah.
And
If you could just
But
take
a lot of them
Superman and compare him to Christ and then have him kill somebody at the end of a movie,
All
I
right.
think you would really...
We're going to probably talk about Zack Snyder a little bit in this podcast. If you haven't already noticed, we got some hot takes. What are you saying, Justin? I apologize.
No, I was just saying, what about Zack Snyder again?
Oh, we going to talk about him. We're going to air out some grievances. I feel like I can feel it already.
Yeah.
But we should focus on the movie at hand. And after all, the movie's called Superman versus the Elite. We're going to talk about more specifics about Superman in a second, but let's talk about the main event themselves. The Elite, no Kenny Omega or Young Bucks involved, but specifically Manchester Black.
I wish Cody was here.
That was your first mistake.
he's got a Cody level of tattoo on him.
The three-star general
Yeah,
has been
no,
replaced by
I
a
was
British...
thinking the same thing.
Well, let's get it out of the way. The tattoo is terrible.
It's all
You might look at him, and when you first see him, you're like, "Oh, dude, that's."
a T-shirt until he said it was a tattoo, and I was like, "You're an idiot."
Like, if it had been a T-shirt, I would have been like 100% okay with it. But the fact that it's a tattoo is just terrible.
Do you think he did that just so he can tell people all the time, "Eyes up here, buddy"?
Okay, just so you know, we're not talking about Cody Rhodes. We're talking about Manchester Black, who has a huge Union Jack tattooed from his collarbone to the bottom of his abs. And I want you to think about that every time we make fun of Cody Rhodes with his neck tattoo.
It could be far worse. Is the
could
point
be.
we're making.
But obviously, the Elite are a representation of the gritty, dark anti-heroes of the 90s and early 2000s, and is a direct parody.
The Iron Age of comics.
The Rob Liefeld age of comics, actually.
Well, yeah, it's the you have the Golden Age, the Silver Age, Bronze Age, and Iron.
Yes. And specifically a direct parody of The Authority from Image Comics, which was a brand of comics that it embraced darkness and violence, not just to defeat the bad guys, but to solve the world's problems. The Authority, if I remember correctly,
I like Image.
Repeat that again?
I said I loved Image Comics.
Oh yeah, Image Comics has got some bangers out there. Plug them. Why not? Why don't we? The Authority was very popular at the time. I'm not throwing down any shade on them, but a lot of their first couple issues was about look at these world issues. We're going to kill the world leaders of the enemy nations of America, or the people who are committing these war crimes, and just wipe the slate. If we have the powers of God, why don't we use them? Which is something that you will see it's been discussed.
Is
in
the
comics a lot
boys?
recently.
Does the boys
The
dive into
Boys
that?
is definitely something that speaks to this, and is in many ways
Which is
it's an anti-hero.
is that Amazon or is that Hulu?
Amazon Prime? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Amazon.
And I will say definitely The Boys and that whole Mark Millar and Warren Ellis type of story is the exact kind of thing that the writer of What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and the Superman vs. Elite, same writer by the way, what they were exactly trying to comment on, which was that the type of heroes in the world had gotten very much darker, and the way people were responding to them wasn't in the term of looking at the Punisher and saying there's a lot of nuance in there, there's a lot of darkness in there, and you can see him as an interesting character that has a lot of flaws, and you can point out the flaws, but a character that people automatically emulate, which is a big problem that we have generally in pop culture, I would say. You want to look at Walter White. A fantastic character, one of the best characters ever written. People will say he was right the entire way through. Look at Fight Club.
Yeah, people hate his wife, and it's dude, he starts cooking meth.
Minute one.
Her reaction to that is reasonable.
But it shows you how easily people are swayed. They will put up with a lot if you were entertaining or unique or, in some way captivating. They'll put up with anything, just about.
I mean, Walter White's story is absolutely compelling, but you're not really supposed to be oh, dude, this rules.
Dude,
remember when he killed that guy?
Remember when he killed the whole gang and also their families? Look how rad that was, because in a big bloodbath.
Yes.
Wasn't that so rad? I mean,
remember when he lost his humanity?
man, I want to do that. What?
Well, if you want to go trace that character back in modern cinema, I mean, it's not the first, but it's one of the major ones. You got to go with Death Wish, Charles Bronson.
Oh yeah.
You know, the normal guy pushed to his limits and decides to strike back in a lethally violent way,
Dirty Harry.
and people start rallying.
Do you remember Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
Falling Down is a great movie.
Yeah.
I do not know where we can find that because I know the movie. I haven't looked it up recently. It's been a hot minute.
It's all good.
But Manchester Black and the leader of the elite basically have that mentality of the very first line he says is "Time to take your medicine, love," which is essentially like the world is sick. We're the cure. We're the ones who are going to make the world a better place, not the Superman business.
Oh my God, Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin, dude, you gonna let that slide?
What?
Crime is a disease.
Oh, dude, I just thought about Dirty Harry, but I thought he was on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt
Oh,
him.
I was gonna, yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, I thought you were going to be quoting Cobra, where he says the line
I
and the
thought
thing
you
is
were
like,
Cobra too. Crime is a disease and a cure.
Oh, you're the... Oh, dude.
Okay.
Right. My bad. I'm sorry.
oh
Take
my
your
God.
medicine.
Dude, that's the second best one-liner in the movie.
Cobra.
The best one being when the guy threatens to blow up the grocery store. And
Go ahead. I don't shop here.
Dude.
You're the disease. I'm the cure.
oh, man.
Dude.
Oh.
The one-liners in that movie were off the chain. Off the chain.
Well, all right.
Did I wake you?
I'm just thinking of a bunch of action one line. I'm just immediately going to Commando, like, let off some steam, Bennett.
What killed the dinosaurs?
That is not Commando, but I respect
That's
it.
not. No, but I
Yes.
vividly remember that every time. It's burned into my memory, dude.
Okay, but I have so many thoughts about one-liners. We can't go down this path.
Yeah,
I'll start
let's-
talking about X2.
Let's get back to
we
this
talking
movie.
about
Let's
White
get back
House
to this
Down?
movie.
Let's talk about X2. Never mind.
Okay. Anyways, this is all culminating where I'm going to ask everybody, what do we all think of Manchester Black's MO, essentially? Like, yeah, it's the general thing of all anti-heroes, which is basically like, I'm going to be the one who saves the day, but Manchester has his own reasoning as to why he does it that he explains throughout the movie. What do we think about that, I guess?
The presentation of him to me, and I don't know if that's what you're asking, but the presentation to me of him is super cool, laid back, till he gets mad, right? That's the perception they want you to have,
Yeah.
right? Well, I don't know. Jared's looking at me
No,
like he does not agree with that perception.
I disagree pretty strongly.
Oh, here we go.
Go.
I'd go so far. They're not anti-heroes. They kill a dog within 20 seconds of being on the screen. The movie overtly
that's my
and
point.
repeatedly paints them as villains. They have no actual ethos. No ethos is present in the movie. They just kill, and they're shown as to be completely villains. And you were talking about how it was black and white. This is pretty black and white. I don't think
I
Manchester
agree with Jared.
For me, the movie doesn't go far enough with elaborating on the elite, where they do bring up the fact that they were agents for the government, and then they saw what's the phrase he uses? A particularly disillusioning tour in Africa, but they never really tell you why they're doing it. And then they're painted as overtly villainous. For me, I never got an anti-hero vibe from them. I was like, man, these guys are like straight up
Did you have
evil.
Did
And
you have?
Jared,
Go ahead.
I would like to kind of piggyback on that a little bit because I kind of got the same thing. And it bugged me that they didn't push it far enough. I wish that they had made Manchester Black really believe what he was saying and really believe that this was the right way to fix things. I thought it would have been a greater dichotomy with Superman than having him just be, this is all a scam. It was a scam. It was a scam to get it, to set Superman up and get public empathy. But like Jared said, they were never the good guys. They were never really trying to be good guys. So I wish they had pushed that as, they really believed what they were selling.
Yeah, I think the movie also later, kind of undercuts that even further when they talk about how Manchester Black lied about his backstory.
Or remember it incorrectly.
Or, yeah, you remembered incorrectly. Where also Lois says something really weird that I thought was odd, where she says, oh, his sister's alive and all that. And also 12 people died in the train crash. Like, that was his fault?
I think
That's the
When it's just an eye.
I mean, that's a bit of a nitpick where she says that when it's just like, dude, he was saving his sister, and he didn't even like mean to do that. You can't paint him as being evil, and yet she says it like it's a really bad thing to do. And it's like he was trying to save his sister, and it was more or less an accident. You know what I mean?
To me, they probably should have left the dad as a turd, a drunk. About he needs to be
And I
painted.
didn't feel bad when they say he killed him. I really didn't.
Right.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
was
like,
a jerk.
that sucked. Are you kidding me?
Right. So they should have left that alone, probably.
I do, 100% on those critiques. I do think that they're very valid points of criticism towards the movie. There are two mindsets to go about that, which would be, I mean, obviously it is a direct parody of the 90s anti-heroes. And basically is a comment, like, if you were to read them as being 100% pitch black villains, then that would basically be the writer saying, 100% they're the bad guys, 100% like every time you kind of side with them, that's the point, which I don't really think that's a good mentality personally.
That's a straw man.
That's a straw man.
It's a
It's
straw
like
man.
it's kind of, aren't you trying to combat a straw man? So why are you constructing a new one?
It's like Superman is still relevant. Look at him beat this straw man up. Look at that.
And that's
Yeah.
the point that they make on the other stuff too, like on like the Authority and whatnot. They beat up their own Superman. Like, look at this straw man we beat up. Like, you're fighting fire with fire and nothing makes sense. That's why I'm personally of the mindset where I do think that they are not completely far gone, but it's so hard for them to come back because they are so far in the pitch black.
They don't
that-
even like, okay, they kill a dog, but like nothing else they do is like all that bad.
Yeah, like what they do, which leads to the whole argument of
Oh, just killed the dog.
they killed a dog who was annoying them because they're like very much like self-entitled pricks. That they make no allusions to that because they have their power, they're kind of lavishing in it. Hence why Bunny.
I'm
their own
gonna roll
personal
back
thing.
the clock here and point out they killed a dog.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. Hey,
I
You can kill people all you want to. But
You
leave
kill
the animals
Lassie?
out of it.
Yes.
you kill Lassie?
kill a dog?
Dead to me.
You're
It's
done,
true.
buddy.
that's why I hate every modern
You're on
horror
the
movie.
list.
Because they kill dogs?
Dude, every time a dog gets introduced in a horror movie, just
Name
it's
the
dead
horror
already.
movie.
Name a horror movie.
Name the horror movie where the dog dies.
CM Punk's Last Door on the Left. That's not the name of the movie.
Boom.
Is that the
CM
name of the
I
Punk.
movie?
haven't seen that one, but I'm thinking of like the.
I don't know I think it's the third floor or something. But
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. The new CM Punk movie. Yeah, the dog.
I have not
died.
Does the
seen-
dog live in that though?
No, he doesn't. No.
CM Punk, how could you
I do
betray
feel
him?
that it could be used correctly to justify a murder spree like in John Wick. But
Anyway,
Let's
Let's
get back
move-
to it.
let's move
Yeah,
along.
yeah.
we should probably talk about the man himself, Superman, the other side in this fight. What do we? Because this is very much a very classic type of Superman we're talking about.
Yeah.
What are our thoughts on this kind of Boy Scout?
I wasn't a big too fan of the design.
Oh, we're gonna talk
but-
about the art style in a bit.
Oh.
That's a whole other
But
discussion.
just his personality, just in general.
Well, what do you think about the voice act? Like the voice acting, I feel like
The voice
Manchester
acting
Black
was
was
pretty
like top tier.
Voice
It
acting.
was like that snidish way that he's able to throw his voice around.
Correct.
his
like,
voice,
kinda
his
made
voice
you believe
acting
it.
was really good.
And I think George Newbern was the voice of Superman. And
Correct.
for me, this was like the definitive Superman. I mean, maybe that's just me, but like the way that he feels like a Boy Scout.
It definitely did feel like Superman,
Mhm.
and not just a
it did.
thing, not just like an interpretation of Superman.
I actually have a quick shout out for voice acting. I liked Polly Perrette as Lois Lane.
Oh yeah.
I thought her voice brought some character to the role, even if she didn't really do a whole lot. during
Yeah,
the
like she
movie.
brought her own spunk to it, which like with Lois, like Lois has always been that one character in Superman that either you forget exists or like steals the show, and it just depends
She's
entirely
like
on
a
who's
walking
performing.
MacGuffin half the time, though.
She is like not just in like
Who's
movie, but
who's the girl that plays Superman in the Christopher Reeves ones?
what's her name?
Like,
Oh,
you
dang,
mean
that's-
Lois
She
Lane?
killed that role.
She did.
Lois Lane. She plays Lois Lane. She killed that role.
Yeah, that's another one where like you steal
I
the
cannot
line,
say
like
the
we
same
said.
for the modern one.
Like
And that lady's
Amy
a great
Adams.
actress.
Amy Adams
She's
is-
great.
Amy Adams is an incredible actress.
She's not
Academy
great
Award
Lois.
nominee.
Why is she
Okay.
in those movies?
Okay, we're
Very
gonna talk.
mentally ill.
We're gonna talk about Zack Snyder in a bit.
I'm
trust
sorry.
me.
I'm sorry.
We
I
gonna
thought
enter
this
that
was
whole-
a very good, plain
bit of a dork.
This was by the book Superman.
Right. And
This
he
was-
really, I enjoyed you were talking about the comic, I enjoyed the way he looked as Clark, although obviously anytime you have a comic Superman where a Clark is walking around at 6'8",
yeah, like,
I
I wonder who that is.
Yeah, right.
Built like a triangle.
What was their name?
Margot Kidder.
Margot
Margot
Kidder.
Kidder.
Yeah, she hit a home run in those roles.
The reason why I super dig this interpretation of Superman is like in the very first fight scene where he's like tackling Atomic Skull, throwing him around and whatnot. There's a point after he throws him in the water where you see that small little like what is this I'm doing with my hand? Like a twitch, a fidget on the hand where he's like slight considering of like you have killed so many people, and then he just like it's a split second, but then he comes back because it kind of drops what the whole movie's about, which is the hint of doubt.
Well, and don't you get to with that? Yes,
I did think that by the end when he went mad, that was really threatening.
We're going to
that was
whole discussion.
But I do think too though the twitch. I feel like they did a good job in this of letting you think that that's not just him having to hold himself back, but him wondering if I need to show these people what I'm capable of and what they want, because they have to believe in something, and for some reason they're not believing in me, and maybe more physicality would bring that.
Which is why that brings in that hint of doubt, which is also what the elite kind of provoke. Continue, Justin. I apologize.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask if Kevin was saying Superman should become a spot monkey. That's what you're telling me. Hitting him with a melter driver or something.
I think we're all
make
learning
sure the fans love him more.
that everyone should be a spot monkey.
Everyone should be a 3-star general.
I think
But
a 2-star
one other
general.
voice shout out, Manchester Black. Immediately, I recognized from Skyrim, where he was part of the Thieves Guild. He was Brynjolf in the Thieves Guild.
Oh my God, he was. Oh my
Yeah, it's
God.
I forgot the voice actor, but yeah, he's been jumped around for a bit. But that seed of doubt is something that kind of, even when he's first meeting the elite and the elite are kind of coming into their own as a superhero group, when they work together. It isn't exactly a fist fight off the jump. He's trying to like show him the ropes, because I think at that point, because he mentions earlier, maybe I should just pass the torch.
And if you notice, that's in great contrast to the way he is with Batman in those movies. Batman was absolutely the wrong signal to be sending people, and yet these guys are similar. I would assume Superman thought they were similar to Batman, and yet he's trying to embrace them.
That is why I don't think it's the straw man argument for the elite, why it's like, oh, they're very much a parody and they're just supposed to be the bad guys, because I feel like that segment of the movie where you see them working together shows the moral gray of them wanting to be better. Even if they're too far gone,
it highlights,
and they're too like stubborn in their methods.
They're also supposed to be a highly skilled military group.
They are, but
So
they
working
ain't knowing
together-
how to. Just because you're highly trained in the military doesn't mean you know how to work a superpower.
Well, also
Isn't
though,
that literally what they did though?
I do think.
Do you think they knew?
I do think though it does underline one problem Superman will always have, which is he does believe a little too much in us.
humanity.
We don't deserve. How
Which
he feels
brings
about
us to the next point beautifully, which is the B plot or the subplot, which is the politics of Balalia, and I forgot the other country's name. Two made-up foreign countries that are currently going at a Cold War that's quickly turning hot with mechs and weird sci-fi guns. In the comic, I think it was a big monkey. That just like, I kid you not, it was a big monkey that just like annihilated the whole town.
I got you. Yeah.
But here it was like more of just like, it was a slow burn of watching the politics of these two countries like start to go to head to head, and Superman basically trying to calm the waters because he feels like that's his duty, that's his job. And the elite show up saying, maybe you're going about this the wrong way, bud. You know? So what do we think about that whole B plot of being like the underlying story of showing the differences between Superman or the elites, kind of the anti-hero versus the Paragon? Do we think it was handled well? Do we think it was handled okay? Do we think what are our thoughts? What are our thoughts?
The Superman way is I'm going to try to guide you to peace.
Yes.
You know, whereas why don't we take over both countries?
Why don't we just like nuke from orbit, start again?
And we've seen that throughout history with superpowers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know that it was handled greatly here, but it was at least handled. It should have been a part of the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it should have been a better part of the story.
Who knows? Justin, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it always gets a little even more fantastical than Superman usually is because, you know, conflicts like that have existed long before anything. They will always exist. So, you know, when they take these kind of superficial, like, oh, if only we could get these, you know, either way, if we kill this guy and it'll fix it, or if we get all these people to just sing Kumbaya in a circle, it'll fix it. It's a lot more complex than that. And sometimes you just can't get into that in these kind of movies and stuff, but, you know.
I think it's too complicated to do it either way, which is the kind of what the movie is kind of hinting at, which is the Superman way could work, and we'd like to think that it works, and the Elite is another thing that, like, if you get so angry enough, you just want to do that almost. You just want to just, like, after you've lost so much, maybe, like, screw it. Maybe, like, fighting on their own low ground with their own methods will finally get them to listen. And I think what they're trying to say is, like, it's Superman's way is arguably the better way, but it's not going to be for sure the answer. But it's kind of similar to the Elite, where it's like, ish.
Well, at the core of it, though, there is, do you have the right to decide that there's no way these two people can get along, therefore I need to interfere?
Yes.
And that's going to be an eternal question, especially now that when you have countries that are able to do damage other than to themselves, right?
Yes.
Where do you have the right to try to, because you really don't have the right to interfere in their business until it becomes business greater than theirs.
Unless you're the world's policeman.
But you see what I'm saying, though. But I mean, if you boil it down, though, you know what I mean. The world's policeman is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you boil it down, Superman is able to really realistically be a world's policeman.
Yeah.
And yet he realizes that they have to make their mistakes first. And if they do make their mistakes, then I get involved.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Which is different than I'm going to change it. I've assumed that you're going to shoot Larry, therefore I shoot you.
Yes.
That's
going full Minority Report.
You can't pre-strike a crime, right?
Mm-hmm. What else what do you two think, Jared and Ray?
We were talking about the Bialia subplot.
The Bialia, yeah.
It was all right. I kind of died with Kev when saying that. Yeah, it's part of the movie, but it wasn't as.
I think it's supposed to be in the background, but it's supposed to be that very important layer that kind of like solidifies the whole conflict, because that's the way most B plots are always like the thing that lie in the background.
It
like
should have felt more important.
This whole, like, there's so much in this movie that should have been way more fleshed out than it was.
And you would think, because it's a very short movie, again,
it's based on a single episode of a comic, and it's like, dude, how squished is the comic?
The comic is very squished.
Like, how much, like, what did they even expand upon? Because they didn't expand it, like...
I think, if I remember correctly, the comic was much more black and white with the parody, and this one actually decided, we're going to flesh out the Elite at least a little bit, so that way they can have something to chew on. So that way, like, you have the proper argument of anti-hero versus hero.
When you say the Elite, you mean specifically just Manchester Black, because the rest of the Elite are just, not present in the slightest.
Or nothing.
What's
that one? I can only remember.
There is Pamela, who is the girl.
Snake Lady.
Snake Lady. There's a Cold Cast, who is the dude with chains. And there is Hat.
I remember Hat
the
because his name's
absolute worst one-liner ever.
What's his... What?
In the last little bit where he's just like, everybody knows Superman can't do magic.
He just gets...
It's like, what does that mean? That's not even quippy. That's just something you say, and then he immediately gets owned. And it's just like, what is happening? Why did he say that?
It kind of like leans arguably to the Authority, where there's always like the figurehead, and then like the parodies. Again, this is where we're like, are we... Okay. This is where we're like,
right,
kind of
and also too,
hairs.
maybe too, when you're talking about that subplot right there, that is really complex, and you are talking about, so maybe they put their toe in it, but they realize this is also something that's going to be watched by 8, 9, 10-year-olds.
Yeah,
right, and so
let me kind of make a thing right here, because this is where I really wish they had made the characters where, you know, Manchester Black really believed it. You know, and this was his real, because you can make, I'm not saying it's a good argument, but you can make a more seductive argument of, you know, when they take out the leaders, these are the guys who always get away with it. They send other people to die. When you start making them die, all of a sudden you change the game, and maybe people are less likely to put a finger on the trigger if it's them paying the price and not some dumb kid from Kansas.
If
or
I remember
something like that.
correctly, I think that's what he says in his speech when he's like finally takes over the TV, where he does kind of make the argument of like, this is gonna like, look at what's happening, look about what we're about to do, cross your T's and dot your I's. Basically, I think it was something on what he said, which is like, this is going to ensure that this never happens again.
Right.
Kevin, do you remember Remo Williams? The bitch. And
Yes.
you remember that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Adventures of Remo Williams.
The
Yeah.
book. The book it came from, the Destroyer book. You ever read any of those?
I only saw the movie.
The books were pretty good too. They were the same kind of stuff. But Chun, the martial arts guy on that, who taught him the secret martial art. One of his favorite quotes was, "Assassination is the highest form of public service."
Ouch.
Which I always thought was pretty cool. And and it's like the leaders, the big dudes, are the ones who never have to pay the price. They always skate. If they start having to pay the price for their decisions, all of a sudden maybe their decisions will be more judicious.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and on that note, we should probably talk about the ending. But before then, before we get into the ending, you brought something, Ray, which is the art animation, which has always been like, when it comes to this movie, that's one of the first things people kind of bring up, which is either you love it or you hate it. So I guess the question I ask is, did we love it? Did we hate it?
It was very strange.
Okay, just for clarification, it's very blocky and cartoony.
It's very blocky and cartoony, but I do feel like sometimes, like in the fight scenes, I think Jared brought this up. Sometimes the animation just gets straight up better in the fight scenes, and it's very jarring.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the dialogue scene at the beginning is just not very good. Their faces just kind of like wildly slide around. Like I do.
This is where Nick's gonna go a bit weird, because like I've been saying the arguments that people can have about it. This one's my argument for the art style in defense, which is it's very like the very first scene you see in Saturday morning cartoon. You cut to today, like where they are, and it's not that different. I think that's the point. I think it's supposed to look like a Saturday morning cartoon.
I think it's supposed to look bad?
No, I think it's supposed to look like a Saturday morning cartoon. Hold on, hear me out. Because of the way that it's supposed to be like the idealistic Superman, so that way when it goes dark, when people start bleeding, when things get weird, it makes you have a visceral reaction of like feeling uncomfortable. And that way when you see Superman making that weird face when he's up in the camera's face, you feel uncomfortable, because of the animation, but that's also kind of this meta reflection of like, this doesn't feel natural because this isn't what it's supposed to be. And a Superman like this and the way that the Elite handle things is not supposed to be comfortable, because it's something that is dark and I don't know if I want this. That's my argument for it. I can understand completely if it's not your cup of tea, which is why I think that's why the animation gets better, because they know what they're doing with it. And I could just be giving them way too many props for something that they had no intention of doing. But that's because I've seen a bunch of the DC animated films, and this one I picked up specifically because of like the story and whatnot, but also because the art style is so distinct and separated from any other DC animated movie. Because they have the recent 52 stuff, which is more like the same kind of classic art style, and then you have the more referencing to the comic, but this one is very much cartoony for a reason, and I feel like that's the reason why.
I feel like I want to draw a line between art style, which I do like, because it is classic in a lot of ways, and animation, which ends up looking weird. A little choppy, a little. Again, their faces.
I'll give you one.
Yeah.
Which uses a blocky kind of style, almost in a similar sense. Very clean lines, a lot of open space in it. God of High School, which is coming out right now.
Oh, I have not heard of that one, actually. I thought you were going to go
it's really
Frank
good,
Miller.
But the anime style is very much, it's not as super detailed as as the push has been. I think they do it really good there, but I kind of, this just doesn't seem like, I don't know. It could have been a lot better for me, the animation. It just...
I understand. It's definitely like... It is weird.
It's like now you Dragon Ball Z good.
Sorry. I like your points about the art style, but when I talk about animation, it has the problem that most DC movies have, in which it's just it's very how do I phrase this?
I don't.
Is unnatural the right word?
I mean,
but it's
a kind of uncanny valley almost.
Yeah, depending
yeah.
on what you mean by that.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Okay, we can't see. We can't hear.
I know, but it's hard to.
It's where he's
you
like
know
doing
they're
thing where
not-
like the mouth is opening and nothing's coming out.
You know that they're not saying the words that are being portrayed on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the voice, the lip work.
And it can kind of just take you back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that this was just
It
a
isn't
massive problem. It's not. It is a fairly minor thing, but it is still a complaint.
It's still something that drew you out of the movie.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a complaint I have with most of these DC anime. Yeah.
Kevin, what did you think? Did I go too far into my thought process? Did you?
No,
I mean-
I had not.
Or not? Well, I mean,
I
like,
had
okay.
not thought about it in that way, and that does make sense to me.
I do want to defend things that weren't even, quote, intended by the author working towards the narrative and themes. I still find those totally valid. I'm a big believer in death of the author when it comes to making works better.
Yeah.
Again, it's very my distribution of death of the author is very uneven. If I think it improves the work, I'm all for it. If I think it detracts from the work, completely against it. You know what I mean? But no, things that are even unintentional still can add towards the narratives and themes. I do agree 100%.
And again, I don't expect everyone to agree with that reading of the animation of all things, but that's what I took away after I watched it. And then now finally, of course, we should probably talk about the big. Okay, we're going to have two final things before we finally finish this conversation, which is the ending. And for those of you who don't know, the movie has been building up to obviously Superman versus the Elite, the anti-heroes versus the Paragon. Whether or not you agree with the anti-heroes or think they're just parodies, who cares? The point is you're seeing them throw down. And it ends with the Elite just basically going hog wild on Superman on the moon, nuking him with cold cast, and then Superman snapping. And Superman snapping equates to what it appears to be Armageddon level event of him wiping the floor. The quote that I was thinking about is like, this is when I finally decide to put the animals down.
Oh, this was absolutely my favorite part of the movie when
Oh, yeah.
Superman snaps.
It was the best part.
It is.
It
the
was-
Movie, y'all.
Oh yeah.
This was genuinely threatening.
It is.
Like it was.
terrifying.
It was genuinely terrifying. It's so. Like, the way he just destroys all of them with no effort. Even though, like, because they have been beating him
over
like,
and
easily.
over again. And the point where they cut to like the people watching this saying like he's gonna get up, right? No, it's Superman. But then they all just watch almost cathartically, like, yeah, beat up Superman. But then when he starts dying, they start kind of reeling back a bit. And then when Superman comes back and starts killing people, they reel back even more of like, oh God, we've made a mistake.
Right, but it also answers the questions, what if we made the gods angry?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
and,
I agree.
and it's that's the thing that Lex has always been afraid of, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why Batman has a kryptonite ring, because what if we made
What if
Superman
like,
angry?
Yeah. And
Well, yeah, it's a bad day.
Justin, what were your thoughts on the ending?
Oh, I loved it. I will point out he could have ended a lot sooner since he has super speed and none of them do. He could have like poked their brains out.
Well, did Superman? it is Superman.
He
But he lobotomized the man through his eyeballs.
It is Superman. So you
It's
can.
wild.
It is Superman. So you can just kind of any ratio of his super speed can like be. He can be very fast. He can be pretty fast. There is no limitation.
He can fly around the world,
And back in
maybe-
time.
reversing it on its spin, going back in time, because that's
That's how time
that
works.
works.
That's how time works.
That's how time works.
Didn't you know?
evidently the
Yeah,
scientists.
it was a really cool sequence. I thought.
What, did you
like,
listen to
I thought
Inside
the way he had a counter for each person was great. You know, I was like, I didn't know Superman had a robot army, and I think he would use that more often.
Classic comics. They went back to the Golden Age, Silver Age. Was that? Anyway,
Probably silver.
well, yeah, it sounds like something they would do in Silver Age. I mean, I'm surprised we didn't have the
Silver
Rainbow
Age
mini
when he
clone.
was like hyper powered.
All right. So, what were your thoughts on the ending, Jared?
As much as I do like the visual, and I think it is a somewhat good argument against the way the Elite are doing things, I think the movie still kind of undercuts itself when it comes to Like, I'm not looking at the elite and going, oh god, those are people who just wanted to do good in the world and now they're being killed. I'm like, aha, the bad guys are getting beaten up now.
This is the
No.
entire
Which is-
linchpin of the movie, which will, depending on how you view it, depending on just like the way you ingest it, is like the whole thing is like, this is the might makes right, arguably, until the very end, which is because I can beat you up, that makes me better. Which is, granted, that's the entirety of the elite's argument. So this is Superman throwing it back at them, saying, "Is this what you really want?" Which is,
But that's exactly what his dad was saying.
which
The
is
scene with
again,
his
that's
dad
the thing.
was-
Okay, so the thing before, like, he does it, like, Pa Kent was like talking to him, and he was saying something along the lines of like,
oh yeah, you can just beat him up if you want, and you'll be right. And it's
I think that was him trying to prove his own father wrong at the very end, at least.
but he beats them up and proves he's right.
But
That's what he
remember-
does.
Superman is
What he did.
somewhat guided by the dad in Kansas.
Yeah,
Also, he's guided by Jor-El.
this is true. But
And-
again, we don't see Jor-El in the movie.
But
Which
that's
That's
who he. That's why he continues to believe. That's why, and that's what makes him so great. It's not in this movie, but the fact that he watches us continually make mistake after mistake that reminds him of what happened on his own planet, and yet he doesn't interfere except for in grand cases, and kind of allows us to have mulligans and reboots all the time in our own lives, is what makes Superman an amazing character. And it's actually none of that is in this, but
I mean,
And also, I'd like to point out the great influence of Superman's childhood as a hero, John Cena.
correct.
Okay.
Facts.
I do not like the ending of the ending where he kind of realizes that,
well,
where it kind of just comes out like, oh, it was a ruse all along.
that's the
And they're
thing.
alive.
I think that's what saves the ending. And this is going to be my argument for it, because like the might makes right thing, I do agree. Like, the whole point of the authority was that it's supposed to provide catharsis. The whole point of the elite is that it provides catharsis. But the thing is, catharsis at what cost? And like, are you really willing to like throw away your morals in the garbage bin so you can like do all this stuff, even if you're fighting someone who has no morals? And so seeing Superman cross the line, yeah, it's cool. It's cool to watch, and it's really fun to watch. But still, it's a thing where it's like, it defeats the purpose of Superman, which is the whole thing about that kind of Zack Snyder, in my humble opinion, missed the boat on with the entirety of the DCEU, which I may discuss a little bit in this podcast in a couple of seconds. And I like, again, kind of going back to the ending, the final bit is really not only to show the fact of how terrifying it is to go down the elite's way, but it's to show specifically that you don't have to. Yes, Superman has all like I have the gotcha where like I have all these things behind me, but it's to show everyone how terrifying it is to go down the road, but also, as he says, how easy it is to go down that road. He could, like, it isn't a threat like I can do it, so don't you, like, I'm pulling an elite. But the thing was like, anybody can do this because this is easy. It's harder to bring hope, especially in a hopeless situation. This is why, like, when he says like you're living in a dream world, like, good, dreams are what I want until we have the dream of everyone living together and kumbaya, blah, 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 say how cheesy it is. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? It's what I want because that's what we all deserve. Which is, again, kind of a point again that I have a bone to pick with good old Zacky Snyder.
And why do you mock the dreamers?
Yeah, why
Which is
are
the point
we,
of the song.
Yeah.
And the point of mocking Superman both.
Yeah. And do we want to talk about Zack Snyder? I feel like it's kind of related to the subject of Superman.
Do it.
versus
Well,
the Elite.
we have had
We've been
a conversation.
alluding to it.
Do you want to? No, go ahead.
All right, here's the deal. And I've said this on another podcast, but I'll say it here. I have no qualms against the man Zack Snyder himself. Mm-hmm. And he, like, what he dealt with at the end of Justice League, like, specifically with why he had to leave, is a tragedy, and 100% my heart goes out to him, and I have no personal beef with the guy. I disagree with the way in which he, like, interprets comic books, because he does everything on a surface level. And something like Superman vs. Elite, where you see Superman make the argument against why he doesn't go down the road of killing, why he doesn't do all this other stuff, why he doesn't go the elite route, is something that that Zack Snyder's and Man of Steel and whatnot, and like Justice League, Batman v Superman especially, didn't seem to get. Which is like, he is supposed to be, like you were mentioning earlier, like have this kind of symbol of hope in the face of hopelessness. Like, you want, like, 100% like I get the Elite's deal. 100% like you want to like rage against the machine, and you should in some ways, definitely. You shouldn't just be a doormat.
How many times have you looked at?
Sorry, you're right.
How many times have you looked at a hero in real, a Gandhi or a Mother Teresa, whatever? To say whatever after Mother Teresa is so wrong, but
what? I'll say it. Whatever to Mother Teresa.
but my point is, how many
not-
times have you seen people out there and said, why do you still believe in humanity after what you've been through?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the point of Superman, right? Why do you still believe in us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yet, like you're saying, Zach doesn't get that at all.
Yeah. Jared, did you have any thoughts? Because you made a face a little earlier.
No, I guess if I had anything to say about the ending, it's just that I find it hypocritical that Superman rails against the extrajudicial judge, jury, and executioner of the Elite by extrajudicially judging, being the jury, and removing their powers without any due process or court of law or anything. I just find it to be just all out of place.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he just beat them and then took away their powers, while claiming that you shouldn't use your powers to do things outside of the law, I don't know, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think it hurt everything he was saying. The fact that they were never like even then, like nothing they did was like unforgivable in a lot of ways. Like working for the government, they probably did a lot of stuff that was bad too, but like they don't ever get the chance to like change or anything. They're just punished, and then that's the end of the movie. And
I mean, the
other
ending,
point I
he
wanted
tries
to-
to give him, like, I will say in the movie's defense, he does try to give him the out when they're on the moon of, like, we don't have to go down this road.
And he
yes,
does.
but
And when they have the upper hand on him,
that's not
at
how-
any moment he could have stopped that, and they continued.
They could have, yeah, but Black was too busy going on his spiel.
And I think there's an undercurrent. There's a plot that we really didn't talk about that I think is also important for the point I'm making here, which is with Atomic Fist.
Atomic Skull.
Atomic Skull.
Skull.
Atomic Fist, that was
Which
badass,
was
right?
the
Man.
that was the like the whole thing of like the villain who died.
To start with him is that I think the comic convention of criminals who are superpowered breaking out of prison is not analogous to anything in the real world, because I think that if a man who is a flaming skull killed like 30 people, they would probably execute him, right? It's
Yeah.
not
They kind of used his power to power the city, according
making
to
him
I
a
think.
slave.
Making him that, which is not
a
good.
slave. Like, for me, the biggest
So we're
issue,
cool with that, right?
we're just cool with that. Papa Kent's like, dude, everything's cool. The American way works. Just beat them up if they try to say anything to the opposite effect. Where it's just like Superman never addresses any of the flaws inherent in his system. He never addresses the people who are hurt by the system. Regardless of the evil that Atomic Skull does, the fact that he is literally a slave to the state is not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that... No, it almost makes him, in some ways, I don't want to say more sympathetic, but you understand why he wants to get out of jail and kill Superman, because they're keeping him as a slave.
Mm-hmm.
Superman never addresses that, never has to face that reality. He never has to face that maybe the system should be changed. He doesn't. He just says, okay, the people who think otherwise, that the system should work in different ways, or to just completely buck the system and work outside of it. To say that to paint them as villainous and evil is, it's just so reductive. It just paints any amount of frustration with the system as, oh, these people are just bad. They're bad, and they've been bad this whole time. I just find it so disingenuous to champion the American way without ever thinking critically about it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the movie, Superman doesn't go, okay, there's some stuff wrong. He just goes, yes, we have to dream.
Blah, blah, blah.
And just let bad things happen, I guess. I don't know. That's probably my biggest crux, the crux of my problems with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in theory, he hands them over to a system, and he doesn't for a reporter. This is crazy, right? He hands them over to a system, and he doesn't look into system. Batman, he sends all of his criminals to where Arkham Asylum, where they're treated horribly and experimented on, and then they get out. Correct?
On demand.
Yeah.
You have that issue in both things. Is part of the reason why my way doesn't work is because the system itself keeps making them worse and sending them right back out to me.
Also, because his system doesn't work because that's the way comic books are written. Again,
Because
that's where it loses any connection to reality for me. Is just like, well, this isn't an issue that's analogous to the real world.
It serves a plot purpose, and they neglect to notice how they need to come up with something that doesn't repudiate everything else in their whole worldview with this one thing. Because you kill all the villains, you got to come up with new villains. So you got to have a way of keeping them alive and containing them so they can get out again. And they take liberties with that idea, and then you end up with Batman is basically sending these people off to be tortured, and Superman's basically sending these people off to be tortured.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
the reason
right.
Batman doesn't kill the Joker is because of it isn't because of a deep pathos of not killing. It's because the Joker sells comic books.
That's which is the big.
Exactly.
It's the
That's
the big problem with
the weird. What's the word for like not positive, not optimistic? It's like the pessimistic way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true, and like it always annoys me when comics try to address that as a plot point because I'm like, that's a you thing. That's not like an inherent thing that happens in the real world. It's a you thing. The reason why Batman doesn't kill people, the reason why Superman doesn't kill people is because you can't just keep inventing new villains.
Do we think that Metropolis is a death has the death penalty? Do we think?
Okay, listen, but again,
I'm sorry. Let's go back to Ray.
I feel like that's also you can't analogy. Like, listen,
I was just gonna.
I'm
just making a joke, but yeah.
Personally, I'm against the death penalty for a number of reasons, but like, okay, if there was a dude who is literally a skull on fire, murdering dozens of people, and is breaking out constantly, I may perhaps change my mind in that instance.
I see dark side. Well, you know what? Maybe the guillotine. The guillotine.
WMD.
Do you still think Batman is against killing people?
Okay, we're gonna go back to Zack Snyder. we have lost the path a bit.
All right, let's get back to
But all right, that basically covers all the points I wanted to make. But I guess I'll get on the soapbox ish because much like Superman, this is my gotcha moment. Whether or not I believe this is a classic, I think it's like one of DC's animated's best. But honestly, even like especially after having this discussion, kind of thinking about it, I do not think, even though I'm presenting it, I do not think it's a classic. But I still wanted to bring it up because I did want to talk about not only the essence of Superman in honor of DC fandom, but also talking about a lot of the interesting political things that it had, whether or not we think it did it right or did it wrong. This is definitely a movie I still think you should at least, it is, if you can find it and it's cheap, it's only like an hour. Like, definitely check it out and see if you have an opinion on it.
It's about
yourself.
as long as this podcast.
It's this podcast
It'll
arguably
be shorter than this podcast.
Arguably, this podcast is going longer because again, the questions that it asks are interesting, even if we are the ones talking about it. But the fact is that we're talking about it because of the movie, I feel like says something. Whether it be about comment about what it truly means to have the truth just in the American way, whether it means like the American justice system, as Jared kind of alluded to, is kind of BS in this movie, as it is in comics. And it's very rare to see a comic movie or show or anything do it right, save for Watchmen, in my opinion, the HBO show.
The Wire.
I didn't think Watchmen. Oh, okay. Let's
Watchmen
not. I'm not
is
going to jump into that because I think that has some problems as well.
I mean, like in terms of like being like realistic-ish of being like critical of it,
ish.
But the point I'm trying to make is whether or not we believe it's a classic, I do feel like it should be something that starts a conversation at least on superheroes, and more importantly, and this is the main reason why I did this podcast: do we think Superman is relevant today?
No.
Which is the real.
I feel like
I'm gonna go. No, dude. I'm gonna go ahead and say
ahead.
not really. Dude, every time I talk to my friend about superhero comic or Superman comics specifically, he's like, "Oh yeah, they're mostly like that." But if you read this one comic, and I'm like, okay, when you have a character that has a deep mythos like Superman, if 99% of his comics are pretty black and white, why do you get mad at people thinking he is a black and white character?
I feel
Justin?
like
Oh, and then of course the movie I'm assuming is a no for classic, obviously. But then again, this was a gotcha.
I like thinking about this movie.
It is fun to think about at the very least.
Justin.
Just go ahead.
Oh, it was really exciting. I've enjoyed the conversation about this. Jerry has had some excellent, just pure on tirades. They were wonderful. Keep that up.
Yeah, I wrote like 800 words.
It's a movie that definitely is.
It was heartfelt. I got what you were coming at, and I enjoyed the conversation around this movie. I think almost more than I ever enjoyed the movie itself. I've really enjoyed talking about it and the things that are brought up and everything. So I think Nick's got a good point there on that. I would think it would be a really cool concept if they would make a miniseries and they would make some alterations to make the characters a little more like from Jared's ideas of don't make them evil.
See, that's
make them have a
interesting,
different
actually.
viewpoint.
Like, if
And
I remember
then argue their
correctly,
viewpoint.
Supergirl has Manchester as a supporting character in the show. I don't know how they portrayed him yet because I haven't checked out the show in a hot minute. But I don't know if they tackle it as well as like you would hope.
I read like one review of the movie that said that they did it marginally better. They at least portrayed it in a better light, but I think it's ran into the same problems where it like wasn't fleshed
It
out
didn't go into
enough.
the depth because of CW and like,
Yeah.
you still have to follow the Monster of the Week kind of format. But I do like that idea. But of course, Justin, do we think that Superman is a relevant character?
I do think he's a relevant character because you can tell good stories with him. You just have to be willing to tell good stories with him.
Mm-hmm.
He is the classic paragon, the hero. You can do interesting stories with that character, but you have to break out of the usual form rote jump that is put on by 80 to 90% of the time. If you're willing to do that, of course you can tell a great story with it. But it requires investment in characters who are, compelling to be against it and three-dimensional, not just cookie cutters.
Hence why I feel like your
become-
idea about the Elite and having it be a miniseries is really a good idea because it would give you a chance to flesh them out and flesh out a lot of the ideas. And seeing Superman versus those morally gray characters, I feel like would bring relevancy. And some comics he has recently. And like All-Star Superman, I think, kind of goes into that a little bit. But that's a whole other discussion.
I feel like a lot of movies that I end up maybe not liking as much. I always feel like, dang, this could have been better as a miniseries. Where I'm like, dang, I wish parts of the movie that I thought were interesting were more fleshed out and would be in like a miniseries, Watchmen-ish situation.
It's why Marvel's Netflix stuff is light years better than anything Marvel put on screen.
I can't wait to talk about Jessica
That's
Jones.
a fact.
I can't wait to talk about
Right.
Jessica Jones.
Like,
And I
if
think
Manchester Black was played more like Frank Castle.
Oh yeah, it's like
Absolutely.
John Bernthal-esque. Like,
isn't it kind of the
David
same
Tennant.
character in its
David
own?
Ten- Ooh, that's a good.
Let me rephrase it. It should be the same character,
That's my point. It should have been the same character.
Mm-hmm.
right?
That should have been the character right there.
I'm sure Frank has some tattoos that he's not proud of.
Has his own skull on his neck.
Just got a giant
I think
American flag.
I feel like
I think. Go ahead.
I feel like. Okay, are you gonna ask me about what?
Well, I mean, yeah, but if you want to take the reins right now, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought this movie had some interesting ideas. I don't think they were done right as well. If I think Superman's a relevant character, I pretty much just agree with Justin.
Mm-hmm.
Just be creative.
Yeah.
Think
I
about
think
who the character is and what he represents
I think-
and at his moral core.
I think
Absolutely.
what we've said, and I want to.
We should totally be making.
I want to
these.
address what you said. Your flaws with Superman, in a lot of ways, are your flaws with Batman, or your flaws with comics in general, which would also take you into the Marvel universe. In that we continually see bad people get out and become, and it's the way we keep the characters alive that take it out. Because if Superman believes in the betterment of mankind, then he should be handing them into a system that is trying to reform them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I've read some really good comics. The Flash being a superhero in particular that has, in certain instances at the very least, attempted to help
The
the
rogues.
the rogues gallery. You know,
But
what I mean?
understand though, who's Superman's biggest villain? Lex.
Lex.
He still believes in Lex. Lex has spent his whole life trying to destroy Superman, and yet he still believes in the guy. So you want to think that when he's handing these people over to a system, the issue with Superman is the naivety in believing that the system is trying to do something other than turn them back over to me for another.
I feel like that in itself
fight.
is a fascinating comic book that someone should get on, and if not them, then we will.
but I do, you see what I'm saying? Like, I think maybe a lot of issues with is Superman a character that's outdated? No, I don't think Superman's ever been done right. Like, we have this great origin story, and we have this guy with these Midwestern values, and I don't think that caring about one another and believing in one another and all that, I don't think that's ever going to be outdated. I don't think that I'm going to do the right thing no matter what the consequences are outdated. I think that believing in us is a beautiful thing, but we have to hand this over to someone who can give it to us in a proper way, and it's never happened. We have, there are a lot of good Superman comic books. I have to go back and try to remember, because I went on a Superman tangent probably more than a decade ago where I read some good ones. We don't get them as much, and we don't. And when they do utilize Superman in Batman movies or whatever, they use him like the hot tag. Right? And pro wrestling, if you don't watch pro wrestling, hot tag, a guy gets beat up and we can't handle it anymore, and we go and we tag in the wrestler who's big and strong. Face. Go ahead.
I had a prescient comment connecting it to pro wrestling, but finish your statement and then I'll talk.
Well, they use him like the Hammer.
Absolutely.
He's the hot tag. He's the guy who comes in when we can't handle it. They did it in the Justice League, right?
Yeah. They kind of did that with go ahead.
The point I wanted to make, it's a little off topic from the train of thought, but it's a relatively good analogy. The way that supervillains keep breaking out of jail is not something that I inherently have a problem with, just in the same way as, oh wow, people are fighting backstage at a wrestling show. Why isn't management banning these people? This very large man is backstage every week beating the snot out of people. I don't have a problem with it as a story, as a piece of a story. But if you specifically bring attention to it,
it's gonna point out the flaws.
It's gonna point out the flaws, and it's gonna be like, okay, yeah.
Well, especially in this one where they are draining, what makes this man alive? They drain from his being.
Yeah.
And fuel the city with it, right? When Batman hands you over to Arkham, at some point Batman he walks around as Bruce, he should go in there and look and go, hey, maybe this ain't where these people should be.
Detective.
The world's greatest detective can't tell that they have the worst sanitarium.
Right. So, and I think this story is a beautiful story in outline.
Yeah.
It's the actual... There's so much you could do here. Like you said, a miniseries is great.
The problem is the fact that, I think because it was one issue, they didn't want to go that far, especially because they had the original writer coming back.
Right.
So you would think that, oddly enough, despite it only being one issue, you're going into so much, you need to go even farther, my son.
Yeah,
if we can talk for 65 minutes on it, you could have gave us a 2-hour movie.
The budget, I imagine it literally just comes down to budget. It's a budget issue. They had enough, and they were asked to make a 1-hour-ish long movie with X amount of money that's not super high. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I don't think it's a bad movie myself. It's a flawed movie, and I think there's a lot of fantastic potential and a lot of great conversations to be had.
I think
that's why I recommend it.
I think it is a 6 out of 10. Maybe 7 on on a real good day.
On a rating, not just is it a classic, but it's getting a star.
I think maybe 5 or 6.
I think 5 is very a little. I would lean more towards a 7. I think 7 is
maybe
solid.
7 on a good day, but I think anyone who puts it below 3 is just kind of lying to themselves.
Because there is a lot.
Jared's got it at a 1.
No, not that low. No.
Yeah. Anyway, do we have any final thoughts?
It had some.
No, thank you for recommending this though. I think that it got us into some places.
It's had some high points. It has its high points and it also has its low points.
And I also think that the mission statement for what we try to do as a wrestling podcast, as a movie podcast, as a music podcast, I think the mission statement is that we overthink things, and for us to take this and turn it into 64 sprawling minutes all over the place underlines that mission statement.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree.
You'll wonder.
So if you are interested in the movie, you can check it out on. I think you buy it on DC's. Like they have it on. Well, it was on some
DirecTV.
stream. It's on DirecTV. You can find it online.
You might have a problem with
Probably.
it on DirecTV though.
You might apparently.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
In spite of the
on
fact
DC
that
Plus,
that
whatever it
they've, in spite of the fact that they've never given us a great Superman to me, other than I do like the early movies with, I do like Henry Cavill as Superman.
I think
he
casting-wise,
looks like a
he's good.
freaking Superman.
And on the same note, like I was
does.
alluding to earlier, I do think George Newbern is a great voice for Superman. I think, like, even despite the movie's flaws, him and his performance and the way he brought Superman was not the issue.
The
I'm
Clark,
gonna
especially
say
the
it.
Clark,
Especially
parts.
the Clark.
And I will argue this one. Smallville, probably
Ooh.
my favorite overall portrayal of Superman.
It's very good,
It is very.
very good,
I
and there
think
is
it's
a
got
real
the
live
character.
villain in it.
Yes.
Oh, why would you bring that up? Why would you bring that up? Don't go. Oh, I think I'm gonna cut it there.
Okay.
So, so for everybody here, here. Actually, before we do it, we're gonna give you a double feature. So, if this hour ain't long enough for you, we're gonna follow it up with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the 7th movie in that whole franchise. So, if you want to see
This is a
some,
two. This is a two.
it's a twofer. It's a twofer.
Oh yeah, you don't worry about like if you haven't watched any of them. It's very meta, but like it still has all the relevant bits in it. You'll get it just from cultural osmosis of Freddy. You'll get it.
Do you know who Freddy Krueger is? You'll understand. All right. So, thank you everybody for stopping by. Justin, thank you for calling for us on the phone, doing what I usually do. Appreciate that.
We.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And so once again, from our team over here at Is It a Real Classic, this has been Litnick, John Wick, Jared, Cobra Kai, KP. Bad time to
Strike first, no
Justine.
mercy.
Oh dang! All right. I
On
was
Netflix now.
Man, it's a stigma thunder.
And Ratatouille.
Don't you.
Put that on a shirt, son. This
Don't
has been
you
a
dare.
Go Home Heat production 2020. Once again, telling you to go out there, find some good content. You'll never know if you'll find the next classic. And got.